please let me know. Okay. They we were appalled when the committee decision came out for a negative attitude on an urgent debate. Therefore, we looked after the reasons and the conditions how this decision was made, and we couldn't have a political answer to that. There's no political answer because all the politically influential bodies who are particularly who have particularly conducted examinations on Turkey had recommended the opposite, and we know that in the committee the decision was taken with a very slight majority, only one vote missing for the majority. So we challenged this in the assembly. And the result was not 2/3 majority. So now the Council of Europe has not said anything in political terms in the advent of a very serious referendum in Turkey, which would change Turkey's century-old quest for democracy into the opposite, handing the power possibly handing the power to a monarch, an autocrat who is controlled by no influential organization, because they are now excluded from the Constitution. There are no checks and balances anymore. Therefore, we expected that this discussion could bring some insight into Turkey's problems, into the human rights crisis. As you will remember, the title of this press meeting is the crisis of the functioning of the democratic institutions in Turkey. There is a crisis. We are not insisting on an urgent debate, for we are opponents of Turkey. As the head of the PACE delegation to Turkey likes to explain, he interprets the situation as the defeat of the opponents of Turkey. We are not opponents of Turkey. That majority in the Parliamentary Assembly, that 94 people who voted for, were not opponents of Turkey. And Turkey is not only the majority of the Turkish parliament. Turkey embraces whole shades and differences of opinions in Turkey, and this is a pluralistic country with different voices and opinions. Therefore, this monistic approach to interpreting the results of the PACE debate is also a reflection of the mindset of Turkey's majority government. Therefore, we are now going to discuss about that, and I'm giving the floor to Hişyar Özsoy. He is the vice co-chair responsible for international affairs of the People's Democratic Party, and then Filiz Kerestecioğlu, our member in the PACE, will also make her opinions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for opening your receptive ears to our position, which is excluded in the Turkish parliament, which is excluded in the Turkish media, which is excluded in the academy. But here we have a rostrum, and we want to make our voice heard. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So my colleague Ertuğrul KÜRKÇÜ briefly described the situation. I would like to add a couple of comments to that. So seriously, we don't know how decisions are being made at this very institution, this parliamentary assembly. We were thinking maybe it could be kind of an example for Turkey to follow, because our parliament is totally dysfunctional, and you know how decisions are being made. But it seems that now the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, at least the Bureau of the Assembly, is following the Turkish example, the other way around. So there were several reports of different organs of the PACE and the Council of Europe, the Venice Commission, the Human Rights Commissioner, plus there were opinions of the Monitoring Committee, the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy, the ad hoc committee specifically to investigate the kinds of human rights violations under emergency rule, and the two co-rapporteurs. They all spent a lot of money, came all the way to Turkey, talked to so many people, and at the end, these were all kind of fact-finding missions. And at the end, they recommended to this assembly to have an urgent debate. But then at the bureau of the assembly, where the agenda of the sessions is determined, the chair of the committee, the monitoring committee, voted against the decision and recommendations of his own committee, the committee that he is chairing. So that is something very interesting. We need to question this a little bit, because that particular person, and the name is not really that important, is represented at the bureau because that person is chairing a specific committee, not because that person has some skills or he's expert at something. He is at that bureau because he is chairing a committee, and he cannot vote against the proposal, the decision of the committee, because he is representing the committee. But then we learned that he was asked by some people from the EPP to vote against. Very interesting. So he followed the orders of his own political party and not the decision of the committee he is chairing. A huge ethical problem as well. And then the result came 14 against and 13 in favor. And at the end of the discussion in the afternoon at the monitoring committee, when he was criticized for his approach of voting no and without consulting with the committee, he said he was sorry it wouldn't happen again. Really, it is, I know it is ridiculous, and it is putting a huge stain on the credibility of the institution, the bureau. In that sense, it is not really a victory, I should say, for the Turkish government. We don't know what kind of tricks, games are happening behind closed doors. We don't know, I mean, like what kind of diplomacy they are carrying out there, but definitely it was not a fair decision, and there were several manipulations to have this result. This time, they could save themselves from the monitoring process, but it's going to come. The monitoring committee already issued a statement asking for a regular debate in April, and for that you don't need a 2/3 of majority in the assembly to challenge the decision of the bureau. So they gained some time. So it seems that the Turkey government is also okay with this, because what they needed was really some time. They didn't want to have a new crisis with the Council of Europe before the referendum. So in that sense, it's a success for them. But after the referendum, regardless of the result, yes or no, there will be a heated debate again about Turkey and the monitoring process. So there was some other element that was kind of functional in the decision of the Bureau, we think, which manipulated actually the opinions of many people here. The decree that was announced right a couple of hours before the meeting of the Bureau of the Assembly, which includes a reduction in the detention period from 30 days to 7 days plus 7 days if need be, and that is up to the prosecution. Second, now people who are detained, they have access to their lawyers, and it is so interesting that some at least are interpreting this as progress. It is strange because they violate your right and then they restore your violated right, and they call it progress. This is really, I mean, it's not serious. But the more important change came with this establishment of a specific commission to handle the complaints of those people who were dismissed from their jobs, the foundations that were banned and closed. So there are about more than 100,000 people victims of this whole process, and now with this specific commission, it is kind of a domestic mechanism to remedy the violated rights of people, particularly in terms of dismissal from jobs and the closure of some foundations. But the problem is, this commission consists of 7 people, 3 of them lawyers or who work in the field of law, and 4 of them are not related to the legal profession. 7 people, and all of these people will be appointed by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice, who have created this whole mess in the first place. So it's not going to be an independent commission, definitely. It's not an independent commission. And these 7 people will have to handle 100,000 cases in 2 years, which is practically impossible. And after, if people are not happy with the decisions of this commission, they can go to the administrative courts. And if they are not happy again, they will go to the constitutional court. And if they are not happy again, then they will come to the European Court of Human Rights. It seems that there was a bargaining there. And now the burden on the European Court of Human Rights is put on the shoulders of this commission and some administrative courts. So they are trying to manage it. This is not progress, because this commission is not independent, and practically it is impossible for this commission to handle all these cases, all these situations. Mainly, both, we think, the Council of Europe and Turkey, they were looking for more time, they were trying to gain time, and now they have the time. But the problem is, now Turkey is headed toward a referendum on what they call a Turkish-type presidential system. Actually, it is not Turkish-type. I think many people should be objecting to the word Turkish-type. It is Erdogan-type. It is not Turkish-type. Save the word itself from, that stain, I should say. And the next session will be at the end of April, and before that we will have a referendum. And if Erdogan is successful, and if the referendum is voted yes, then Turkey will be a totally different country, and Erdogan would have more power, and he wouldn't, we think, care about what the Council of Europe or what the Parliamentary Assembly think about it. So it was an opportunity to take a clear position on the kinds of developments happening in Turkey, with tricks, strange kinds of diplomacy. They had this decision, but we need to underline that the majority of this assembly wanted an urgent debate. They wanted it. Only we couldn't reach the 2/3 of majority to challenge the decision of the Bureau and take the matter to the plenary. So one last thing, by turning a blind eye on the kinds of political developments in Turkey, in the short run, the Council is somehow trying to refrain from a crisis with Turkey, but in the middle and long run, this policy of silence will have a boomerang effect on European countries in general as well. It has always been so. Still, the Monitoring Committee as well as the Political Affairs Committee, they are trying to keep the issue on the agenda. Yes, there won't be a resolution and a voting about the monitoring process, but in the coming months, it's going to be one of the most heated debates at this institution. Let me stop here, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Okay, please. It's for Filiz Kerestecioğlu's turn. Yes.
Okay, and Ertuğrul and Hişyar explained all. Actually, I just want to add only 2 sentences. As Ertuğrul KÜRKÇÜ said, we are not opponents of Turkey. On the contrary, we are very keen on Turkey, and we just want to live in a democratical country, and we don't want to leave the rights what we got until now, and we struggled for women's rights, children's rights, or every democratical rights we don't want to leave. And we also fighting here to remind to European Council as well. Principles are principles, and these are obvious. What are the principles of European Council? And if any country don't obey these rules, we just want to remind that and to call Turkey to obey these rules. That's the point, and it's not only for Turkey, it can be for any other country. And democracy is, if the rules are in general, we should all accept these rules and to be a member of this place. And so this is really can't be in any deal or any bargain, these rules. I just want to remind that. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, no, yes.
So here I think, I mean, I was informed that the monitoring committee formally asked for a regular debate in April, and that means that if the Bureau doesn't accept it, then those who want the debate wouldn't need 2/3 majority. They only need the majority to challenge the decision, and that will pass. As you know, we had the majority at the plenary, but it wasn't sufficient. It wasn't 2/3. So there will be a debate. But of course, I mean, there are all kinds of tricks that we are not used to, because this time we weren't expecting this, given, you know, all the relevant committees and rapporteurs and ad hoc committee, all of them are in favor of it, but then other things happen. I said yesterday in a side event, again, I want to repeat it, seriously, and I don't mean anything specific about this, but really we don't know how decisions are being made here. You know the situation of Azerbaijan and the whole corruption news that we have. Actually, the former chair of EPP admitted to receiving 2.5 million euros for his advice on agriculture. Very interesting. And many other names are also mentioned. I don't want to go into details of that. The Rules Committee will be having a thorough investigation about this issue. But seriously, it's a huge problem, and this whole institution may, the credibility of this whole institution may be damaged if there are problems like this. And we are also looking for some possibility to bring the issue to the Ethics Committee. Particularly, what would be the relationship of the chair and the committee? And this time it was so important. I mean, the whole political dynamic changed. Turkey could have been included in the monitoring process simply because a chair of a committee is not following the proposal, the decisions of his own committee. So it is both an ethical issue and it's also a political issue. So there will be a debate hopefully next time, but we can never say 100% sure, because as I said, we hope that this parliamentary assembly wouldn't follow the Turkish parliament in making decisions. That is a bad example. We are there, we know how things work there. So based on simple majority, they are making most of the decisions here, but the majority of this parliament, its members, they were very eager to have an urgent debate. The other thing is, if this is not urgent, I mean, what is happening in Turkey is not urgent, then what is urgent, really? We will see. We are optimistic. Struggle goes on. Any other questions? Okay.
You said that if people say yes in the referendum in Turkey, Turkey will be another country.
Yeah.
And they will not listen to the Council of Europe anymore.
Yeah.
So what could happen, I mean, between the Council of Europe and Turkey then?
There will be a lot of structural crisis between Turkey and European Union and the Council of Europe. Why I am saying this? Because, see, so there will be no separation of powers, we know that. And this time, it will have an institutional framework. It is not that formally there is separation of powers, but the government or the president, they are simply not following the rules. Now the rules are going to change, and institutionally and structurally, the political system in Turkey will be contradicting many of the fundamental pillars on which the European Union and the Council of Europe were established. The rule of law, an independent judiciary, and separation of powers. All of these will have a constitutional character in Turkey. In fact, today I was going to ask that question to Commissioner Hahn, but I didn't have the opportunity. Really, I mean, institutionally speaking, in a country where you don't have separation of powers, where you don't have an independent judiciary, and consequently no rule of law, how you are going to maintain your relationships with the Council of Europe and the European Union, of which Turkey wants to be a member. So the crisis is going to deepen there. So, and it will be a constant source of tension, because now it will be legal. I mean, destroying separation of power will have a constitutional framework now. And so that is fundamentally, that will contradict, I mean, most of the conventions and agreements of which Turkey is a signatory party. It will be a mess. I don't know how they are going to clear this, but it is going to be a mess. And each time they will be asking Turkey to make amendments in the constitution, probably to change the political system. So this system is going to create problems rather than solving them in terms of Turkey's relationship with the West. But then there is the other thing, of course. I mean, the Western countries may think that, oh, democracy is too much for Turkish Kurdish people in Turkey. Who cares? They may need a strong kind of leader who can do whatever they need. For example, acting as a barrier for the refugees and cooperating in terms of security, doing business, having business deals, contracts. They may also go the other way around, but at least formally Turkey will be contradicting most of the principles of the European Union and the Council of Europe in a highly consistent and constitutional way. Huge problem. Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.